Welcome back, everybody, to the Financial Advisors Workshop. This is the program where we talk to financial advisors and people now supporting financial advisors as well. And we have a really interesting interview today because we're going to meet Erin Botsford. And Erin is one of the leading consultants and supporting advisors and teaching advisors how to be better at what we do. We all have certain skills. We come into this with certain skills, and then how do we round out all the rough edges that each one of us all have to become better and better at what we're doing. So I want to introduce everybody to Erin Botsford. Erin, welcome to the Financial Advisors Workshop.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you, and I think it would be great if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and then your history, and then lead us up to the current day.
Sure. So I was an advisor for 31 years. And the backdrop to that is you and I talked a little bit earlier. I was born in Chicago. My father died when I was 11, left my mom with 6 kids and no money whatsoever. I had a couple big tragedies. I was in a terrible car accident and a motorcycle was killed. I was charged with manslaughter, went through criminal trials and civil trials, and just had a really rough start to life. So my escape was my husband was a fighter pilot, and we moved 17 times. And we came back to the United States in 1988. And I went into a stock brokerage firm looking for a job as a secretary. That's about as much confidence as I had. And he said, "Honey, I'm going to make you a stockbroker." And I was like, "I don't know what that is. I didn't know there's a stock, a bond. I'd never heard of a mutual fund." So I was like, "Okay." So that was my start. I mean, I walked in and I struggled really badly for the first many years. And finally, I was ready to give up. I went to my branch manager. I said, "This business is just too hard." I didn't know anybody in the town I was living in. And he's like, "Oh, honey, you're not a quitter. Don't give up." He goes, "Why don't you go get some business coaching?" And so something happened. Went and got some business coaching. It was a wonderful experience. And in the 12th session, the third year, something happened that would forever change my business and my life. And I'll tell you what happened. So our coach said, "Stand up, everybody. You've been here for 3 years. Find somebody and share your progress over these last 3 years." And so I stood up and I saw this random guy said, "Do you want to do the exercise together?" He goes, "Yeah, let's do it." So, I was so happy with my progress. I said, "I want to go first." And I said, "I'm Erin Botsford from Dallas, Texas." I said, 3 years ago, I was doing around $300,000 in production. And I said, "This year, I'm on target to do somewhere between 400 and 450. And I was thinking to myself, like, "Whoa, look at me." And then it was this guy's turn. And he goes, "Hey, I'm Paul. I'm from Virginia. I'm a financial advisor as well." He said, 3 years ago, I was doing 300,000 as well. And I thought to myself, well, look at that. We're just alike. And then this guy said the words I'll never forget. He goes, "This year, I'm on target to do 3 million in production." And he said, "I've built an entire team around me. All I do is I go out and prospect for new business, bring prospects in, share the philosophy of my firm, and then I turn clients over to my team." And I was like, "What did you say?" I'm like, "Did you just say you went from 300,000 to 3 million in 3 years?" He said, "Yep." "And you don't meet with every client to do all the quarterly or the annual reviews?" "Nope." And of course, the bell rings. It was time to go back to our seats. And I tell people, it was like that ALS bucket challenge moment. I felt like somebody just dropped a big bucket of water over me. I was like, what? I kept thinking, did I miss a coaching session, or did he go to another coaching program on Mars? I mean, I was just dumbfounded. And so I started stammering and stumbling. I'm like, Paul, could I just please buy a few hours of your time?" And he was so gracious. He said, "Yeah, in fact, why don't you come spend the day with me and my team?" So Brian, as quickly as I could get back to Dallas, I made my husband come with me because I wanted my husband to understand. I knew there was going to be this big cost to getting results like that. So I wanted my husband to understand why we were going to probably have to get a divorce and probably, give away our firstborn child. I just knew there was going to be this big cost, and yet there wasn't. And so, what I learned so much of that one day, and I remember coming back and there were so many things going through my head, like, gosh, boy, do I think small. And, I never understood the concept of leverage. So I remember coming back, I had one part-time assistant that I shared with 4 other advisors. And I asked the branch manager, can I have her full-time? And he's like, yeah, okay. So I went to her. She was 20 years old, right out of college. I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to go out and bring in new business, and you're going to do everything else. And fortunately for me, she was like, okay. And so the rest is history. A few years later, I did 3 million, then 4 million, 5 million production. I ended up building 2 offices. I had one in Dallas, one in Atlanta. My goal was to have 7 conference rooms, always filled with clients of my firm, and I wasn't in any one of them. And that's where it ended up. So, what was interesting is that it took one day, one change in my thought process that just started the train rolling down the track. So it was pretty amazing.
Really, really was. So from all that experience then, how does an advisor make that pivot? Like are there certain things that you will express to them that help them make that pivot?
Yeah, what I do is, we're going to talk a little bit about my training program. It's called the Elite Advisor Success System. And I've tried to replicate my learning curve and concisely to get it very concise so somebody can learn what it took me years, because I met with Paul in year 2000, and it probably took me 15 years to get to a point where my company literally ran with or without me. Well, 15 years is an eternity, right? So I've consolidated down. I can help an advisor at least get the ball rolling in 6 months. That was my goal. And it's when I've been able to do that. And the first thing they have to talk about it, but there's got to be a shift in the way they think about their business. And one of the exercises I take them through is the old saying, Stephen Covey's begin with the end in mind. I really want them to picture what happens on the last day of your business. And I want them to think about that. Now, the last day of my business, I got a very large check, all cash for my company. And I was able to walk away. And,
Nice.
So what happens on the last day, it turns out, is going to be totally dependent on what you do today and how you change and you make changes to your business. Because case in point, on the last day for me, there was a last day for another woman. The buyer of my company bought another woman's firm. She had about the same amount of assets under management as me, but she had 2 really big things going against her. One, all of her clients were used to and expected to meet with her. She was the smartest person in the room. And unfortunately for her, she had a team. She just hadn't empowered her team, Second thing, she'd had a massive stroke, very unexpected, and she was forced to sell. And unfortunately, the buyer recognized, these are dollars and cents. This is not rocket science. The risk to the buyer was that all those clients on the books would go away,
right.
And so that risk was priced into the valuation. So I think, what's interesting, Brian, is a lot of the advisors that have gone through my program are tenured advisors, 15, 20, 25 years, and they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and it looks like a freight train. They don't want to get run over. It's like, oh my gosh, I wasn't thinking. Maybe I need to back up a little bit and rework how that last day turns out instead of just falling into it,
Yeah. Wow. So it's about seeing the future and organizing yourself now to make that future different.
Correct.
Nice. So
says I can work with an advisor, and based on what I see, I can tell them what their future is going to look like. Okay. I can also tell them how to change that feature and have a 10x moment at the end of that, under that lane. It's just 2 different lanes you want to go through. So
right. So can you tell us a little bit more? How does one do that? I mean, I know these are secrets in your training program, but share a couple of them with us.
No, really, it's not, like you said, it's not rocket science, but there's a lot of science to it. So my first course really is all getting them to the point where they're open to trying something new, going down a different path, right? The second, so it's divided into 5 different courses. It's very easy. I send them an email every week, every Monday. This week, studying this. And I wanted to make it so if they could just listen to my voice on a podcast, like they're going to be listening to this podcast, while they're driving to the office, while they're on the treadmill, while they're walking their dog, they can get the whole thing that way. So they can devote an hour or two a week just listening to podcasts kind of thing. They can learn everything I know. So the second course is all on, I like to train advisors on how to move up market. And why? Because higher net worth people have more margin in their lives. They're easier to deal with. When the markets go down 10, 15, 20%, they don't freak out. It doesn't change their overall, retirement plan. They have lots of needs. Life insurance, long-term care, they have kids, they have CRTs, they have lots of needs. And I don't need as many of them, right? It's not a volume, it's not Walmart. I try and get my advisors, at least move up to Nordstrom's, okay? You don't have to be Neiman Marcus, but let's get to Nordstrom's, okay? So because what that does is when they have the confidence and the skills to meet with a higher net worth prospect, it creates the revenue necessary to build leverage in their companies. And I'm going to give you a couple of cases in point. One of my advisors, they always give me their permission. Her name's Carolyn. She's been in business 25 years. And before she took my program, she said her average client gave her $1 to $3 million. That's a good client, right? So she said she had this opportunity, this was a year and a half ago, to get in front of a $30 million business owner. And she said, Erin, I swear to God, before I took your program, I wouldn't have even taken the meeting because I didn't know what the issues of a $30 million prospect would be. So that course is called my Secret Sauce course. So she goes, I binge watched the Secret Sauce all weekend. I listened over and over again. When she got to the meeting, the guy's wife wasn't there. And she knows that's a huge no-no. You never give your approach talk. If there's 2 buying units with one of them missing, you don't do it. But she was smart enough. She got the wife on a Zoom call and she went ahead with her approach talk. And she said, after it was done, she goes, I held my breath. She said, the next day, the guy called and said, are you going to be in the office? I'm going to drop by a check for $15 million. He said, I get the other $15 million a year from now. 3 weeks later, she got his $40 million business partner. That's how effective this training can be. And what's really cool, Brian, I talked to her a week ago Monday. I just wanted to catch up. Hey, how you doing? She said, Erin, it's just unbelievable. In her state, she went from number 35 to number 2 in the state for whatever, wealth advisors or whatever. And she said, more importantly, her average client now is bringing in 10 to 20 million instead of 1 to 3 million. She goes, it's changed my life. She goes, she has more freedom. She has money to hire more people. It's been awesome, but that's not an unusual experience, to tell you the truth.
Wow, that's really great. Well, that would say it's good for advisors to work on their business rather than just in their business. Try to figure out how to position yourself and how to be different and how to close those larger situations. And do you really have to culturally be from that world to work with $30 million investors?
No, not at all. In fact, I'll tell you another little story. So one of my advisors, he's kind of young, but he's been in business 15 years, and he had never charged a financial planning fee. And I'm really big on charging a financial planning fee. But so he'd only been in my program 5 weeks. His name is Dustin. And he got a chance to get in front of a $40 million guy. And again, he tells me, of course, they tell me this after the fact. He goes, Erin, I binge watched your Secret Sauce. He said, I did what you told me to do. And because my training is very prescriptive. Again, if you say these words, this is how they'll respond. Say this and then say that. It's just prescriptive. It's like a dance. And he said, the guy came, he said, I exposed all of the weaknesses in his current planning. And he said, the guy's like, oh my gosh, what's it going to take to take care of all this stuff? And what he's asking is, how much is your financial planning fee going to be? Dustin had never charged a fee. He said, but I kept channeling you. I kept hearing your voice go, okay, when you get in that situation, say the biggest number that you can get out of your mouth. So with confidence, he said, my initial financial planning fee is going to be $44,500. He said, the guy said, done. He said he didn't even blink.
Wow.
And what's interesting is I tell my other students, because I'm trying to always encourage them, I'm like, do you think Dustin will ever work for free again? And the other thing I try and share with them, Brown, is, and you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this, is that,
oh yeah,
it's the old adage. Remember, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It is equally correct that when the advisor is ready, the high net worth prospects will appear. They're out there. They're out there. They're everywhere. But the advisor has blinders on because they have no idea what they would say if they ever got in front of that person. So they don't see the red cars, look for red cars, look for red cars. They don't see red cars. They don't see high net worth individuals because they know they don't have the set to close them. So they just stay in a lane where they feel comfortable.
Right. So if you really want to work in that market, you can learn. It's a learning thing, and but you have to be intentional about it.
Correct.
Great. So now if we train everybody in the industry to go after all those high net worth clients, who's going to take care of the small account?
I don't know. No, trust me. You know what? It's only, I've trained 1,000 advisors in the last 4 years. And so there are enough advisors out there that don't want to learn anything new. And
right.
And that's fine. I mean, Walmart is just as profitable as an Neiman Marcus, right? Let's face it. It's just, to me, the issues that as you go up market, the issues and the people are very interesting. And what's really cool is all you have to get is one of them, because birds of a feather flock together. They go out, they go on vacation together. They drink expensive wine together. They go to dinners together. It just takes one. So
yes, and then you get plenty of referrals from those folks. Right. You find once you're in that world, and I will attest to that. I'm not from a money background, lower middle class, and I've been able to bring my practice to the corporate executive world, of which I had no background in it whatsoever. So if you plan for that and you prepare yourself for it, you can be it just as you wish.
Yeah. Well, and truthfully, the biggest bulk of my practice, reason I ended up with an office in Atlanta, Georgia, is I started working with the senior level people of UPS. So I was lucky. I had one or two of them when the company went public in 1999. And it was a triple, it was overnight triple for all of them. I ended up with 280 of the most senior level people at UPS. And so they were ultra high net worth. They had between $2 and $30 million or something like that. So that was a wonderful, broad market. Now, they also, I was lucky because I also went after professional athletes, and I had a lot of business owners. I ended up with getting into a couple of major companies. But as you said, I was just really intentional. My role, I only had one role in the company, and that was prospect and hunt for new business. I didn't do anything else. In fact, I didn't even go into the office unless I had a reason to go in. The office ran by itself.
Nice. So, your famous disturbing tracks. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We all call ourselves financial advisors, and first thing I tell my advisor students is just don't call yourself a financial advisor. I mean, it's like I'm a real estate agent. You own a financial planning company or whatever. You come up with another term, because prospects, by virtue of the title that you call yourself, they make an assumption about you, and they have an expectation of what you're going to talk about first time you meet with them. And literally, way prospects view their world is their attorney is up here, their CPA is here, their Mercedes dealer is here, that we come in under here. So the whole purpose of my initial approach talk and using these things called disturbing tracks is to move myself from here and put myself on par with their most highly regarded advisor, their attorney. Now, how do I do that? Well, I have to look very different from my competitors. So I focus on the risk side of the balance sheet. And I have gotten more clients, and my number one goal is I want to close a prospect of any size in the first meeting, the first time I meet with them. So how do I do that? I started asking them questions about the non-investment areas of their life. And I have 22 different conversations or lanes, we call them disturbing tracks, to point out potential pitfalls in what they either have or haven't done in the non-investment side of their world, of the balance sheet. So it might be simple things like I find out they have a lake house. If they have a lake house, I assume they have a boat. And this might be in just general conversation. I'll ask them, how is your lake house titled? Is it in your own personal name or is it in some, oh yeah, it's all our name. Our realtor, put it in our name. And so I paint scenarios. I tell them stories. Well, what if somebody gets hurt, skiing behind your boat and you're being sued, if your house is in your own personal name, not only going to be sued for the value of your lake house, but you're going to be sued for everything else that's in your personal name is going to be available to satisfy that judgment. Have you ever thought about that? I talk a lot about estate planning, and I teach my advisor students, you don't need to know anything about estate planning to ask them questions and to disturb on them. And, I had one person interview me, they go, isn't that kind of like fear mongering? I said, are you kidding me? I mean, that's our duty. That's our job. If we have a client that's amassed $5 million and it's sitting all in their own name, and they send their kid away from college driving a car in their name, and they have no umbrella liability insurance, and the kid hits somebody, kills them, my client's going to be sued for everything they're worth. Wasn't it my job to protect them? I mean, it's our duty, it's our fiduciary duty, but how do we protect them from those things if we don't know there's pitfalls or there's holes out there? So to me, what's interesting, what I teach my advisors is I position myself I draw a little circle. I am their financial director. I am directing the CPA. I'm going to direct the attorney, the life insurance agent, or whoever is out there that needs to be brought in. I'm directing it. And, and what's interesting is I can actually, in my first meeting, I found it takes about 2 or 3 of these disturbing tracks. And what I look for is either the husband, he starts sweating because he's afraid. He's like, oh my God, I never thought about that. Or she starts going like this, we need to take care of that. We need to take care of that. That's when I know I have a new client. And a vast majority of the clients I brought on never asked me about my investments or anything I did on the investment world. For whatever reason, they make this huge mental leap that I'm pointing out things that their attorney never said to them or pointed out the real estate agent, their CPA. Nobody's pointed this vulnerability out to them. So I must be really good at managing money. So
yes. Well, it's interesting you say that because most of the surveys have shown that like performance of the market and their account is only about 20% of the equation. And so what's the rest of the equation? I think you nailed it there. Asking lots of other questions about lots of other things in their life and being useful. And there's so many ways advisors can be useful that they're not even aware of. They don't think of. Entrepreneurs have companies and they can do company benefits.
Yeah.
Do financial advisors do that? Not really, not often. Yeah. Usually insurance people. There's so many things they can do. And so your program helps draw that out of them and give them the full scope of what a financial advisor can be as a financial director.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I always tell people, most advisors it's like they have a one-legged stool. They focus on the investments. And let's face it, that's where all the money is, theoretically. But to me, to build a sound, solid practice and really do your job, your fiduciary duty is to put a lot of legs on that stool. You want to talk to them about their estate plan. You want to talk about, do they have umbrella liability insurance? How is their second home's title? What about long-term care insurance on mom or dad? What about life insurance on sons and daughters? And I mean, the whole family needs to be addressed, because and what I say to people, when I say to my prospects, if they come in and they have $1 million, I'll say, whether they have $1 million or 10 million or anywhere in between, if an event would happen, and let me assure you, those events happen in a split second of time that would cause you to lose all your money. I don't really care how good your money managers are. It's just that much more for an outside entity or person to take from you. Now, having gone through a criminal's lawsuit or criminal trial and a civil lawsuit, I'm probably more attuned to the vulnerability than a lot of people are. But my mother was worried we were going to lose the only asset she had, which was our family home, because of this car accident I was in. Turned out nothing happened, but man, she had some sleepless nights over it. Well, is that what we want for our clients? Right.
Very interesting. So there's a lot of marketing methods, and it sounds like you've devised very interesting ways. Tell us about some that don't work. There are lots of ways that don't work that people think they do.
When you talk about marketing, what are you talking about?
marketing ideas and directions for a business?
Well, okay, I have a theory about that because I teach my advisor students 10 different ways to market or prospect for their business. And I feel like everybody has to have 3 of those things going on at the same time. Why? Because I think that prospects want to engage with you the way they want to engage with you. Some of them want to be referred in. Some of them want to see you from a distance, maybe hosting a webinar or seminar. They want to see you from a distance. Some of them want to meet with you one-on-one. My favorite marketing idea is called my Out to Lunch Bunch, and I teach a whole class on that. But so I don't think you can, I don't think it's wise to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do seminars. You're never going to get a high net worth prospect to come to a seminar. But, so to me, you have to have multiple channels going that address the manner in which prospects want to engage with you.
Mm-hmm. So seminars might work, but not exclusively and not for everybody.
Correct. They definitely, I did 6 seminars a month for years and years and years. So, but they didn't bring in my ideal client. They paid the bills.
Okay. So what methods do work besides the conversations that you've developed? Are there certain types of programs that work better with that style?
Well, like I said, I wish we had time to talk in depth about it, but there's a thing I call my Out to Lunch Bunch. And I give the example how it started. Everything I did was started by mistake. Because, there wasn't a lot of training back there. And, the guys in my office, they locked their books. They didn't want, they were rooting for my defeat. They weren't trying to help me. So I get to Panama City, Florida. I started this business. I didn't know one soul outside of my husband. He was a military officer. Military people have no money. So I walked into the local chamber of commerce, and I asked the lady standing behind the desk to have lunch with me. Well, she was probably making $3 an hour, and she wasn't qualified to be my client either. But I gave her the gift. I call them Out to Lunch Bunch. I gave her the gift of talking about herself for an entire hour. And I had just been reading a book, interestingly enough, on this idea called the law of reciprocity. When you give somebody something, you and I are both aware of this, they feel compelled to give you something back.
Right.
Right. I mean, we see that it's just in our DNA. It's everything that we do. So I would ask her all about her favorite restaurants, where she get her hair cut, who are the most interesting, people she's ever seen or whatever. I just focused on her. She asked me, so Erin, what is it that you do? Well, I own a financial planning company, but what were you saying about that last vacation? No, who's your travel agent? Who should I, whatever. And at the end, 99.9% of the time, if you keep the conversation focused on them, they'll turn around and say things like, gosh, this has been the most interesting conversation I've ever had. Yeah.
Nice.
You talked about it. And so I teach my advisor students based on who that person is. There's 5 potential outcomes that could come from that one lunch. In her case, I said, hey, I'm new in town. Who are the movers and shakers I need to meet, in town? She goes, oh my gosh, you need to meet Bob the banker, Joe the plumber, Joe the attorney. I said, well, would you mind introducing me? Oh, of course I would. So there's a whole system. So I would go to lunch. I used to call it breakfast, lunch, cocktails, dinner. I was out with people, strangers. Oh gosh, like I said, breakfast, lunch, cocktails, dinner, minimum 3 times a week. And I built a large, database of people, and I converted many of them to clients. So that's my favorite marketing prospecting.
Nice. Wow, great idea. So where does your business go from here? Are you going to continue to train financial advisors, and are there new things that you're picking up as well and learning?
Oh, of course. But we're always adding things. And so at this point, I've trained over 1,000 advisors, and it's just been kind of like onesie twosie. But now I've got major broker dealers calling me and putting together these cohorts. And so right now, I don't know, we have 4 or 5 getting ready to launch between now and September. And because they want their advisors trained, and what they've realized is that, some of these broker dealers and companies, they're trying to build these things in-house, and they're realizing that advisors don't trust home office people. Okay. because they've never actually done what they're training how to do. And that's the problem. And so the companies that are coming to me have wasted a fortune trying to build it internally, and nobody values what they're getting. So fortunately for me, they're now wanting to do a lot of outsourcing, and that's what I do. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, we should train another 1,000 advisors this year, the way the numbers look. So I just think it'll be better. I mean, I love improving on the profession and making people, they're addressing more of the people sitting in front of them are addressing more of their needs, and they're learning more. And so, yeah, and I'm learning a lot.
Great. That's great. Well, good. Well, you've got some great advice for everybody here. We're coming to the end of our discussion. Are there any other messages you'd like to send to the collective? About 1,000 financial advisors will see this over the next year. What would you like to tell them?
Well, I'd like to tell one more story, because this is how valuable taking a true and abiding interest can be. So I was giving a seminar, and this woman was in the seminar. I had no idea who she was, and she actually asked me out to lunch. I later found out she was the bookkeeper for a very, very famous Dallas Cowboy. And if I mentioned his name, everybody knows him. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's asked me for lunch, and she's probably thinking that all I want is an appointment with her boss. So I never, ever, I didn't allude to the fact that I knew who her boss was. I never mentioned him. I took a true and abiding interest in her. So tell me what you do, where's your favorite this? At the end, again, it's an hour of allowing somebody to talk about themselves. At the end, she said, you know what, Erin? I really think, Joe and Pat can really use your help. Now, mind you, she really didn't even know what I did for a living. But I was thinking to myself, are you kidding me? And their names are not Joe and Pat. But the next thing I know, the next week, I'm sitting in the office of the most famous Dallas Cowboy probably ever. And truthfully, Brian, at the time, this is maybe 10 years ago, even I was not confident in that situation. But, I teach advisors. I went in there and I'm going to fake it till I make it, right? And I thought, oh, I'll be out of the office. He'll give me 15 minutes, I'll be gone. 2.5 hours later, I had a new client. Okay? So never discount the people that you're in front of. And if you are sincere, and if you really take an interest, I call it a genuine and abiding interest in people, for whatever reason, it tends to pay back in spades. So never discount what can happen by taking an interest in other people. That's kind of my final comment.
Excellent advice. And being present really matters, doesn't it?
It does.
Really,
it does.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Erin, so much for being with us today. And if any of the folks want to learn about that, they can contact you where?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's www.erinbotsford.com, just my name, erinbotsford.com. If they want to sign up, they push in /next steps, and they can get started on their journey. So
awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for being with us. And maybe some of the great financial advisors listening to this will benefit from your work and your experience. It sounds really unique and really cool. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for being with us today. Maybe folks want to call Erin and check in with her and see how you can get better at marketing to very, very, very wealthy families and get in the doors that you didn't think you could get in. And there are ways to do it. And Erin's living proof of that. So thanks, everybody, for being with us. We'll be back again with another great interview, just like Erin. And thanks for being with us today, everybody. Bye-bye now.